I was standing at the rail during the final stretch of a race recently, and the noise it was absolutely deafening. Right next to me, there's this guy, veins popping out of his neck, face turning a shade of purple I didn't think was possible, just screaming at the top of his lungs. From the outside, you'd swear he was a man who had just bet his entire life savings and was watching it all vanish into the turf. He looked desperate, almost manic. But when the dust settled and the photo finish flashed on the screen, his reaction wasn't what I expected at all. He didn't curse his luck. He didn't tear up his ticket. Instead, he turns to me, his eyes beaming with this sort of intellectual fire, and he starts dissecting the horse's pedigree. He wasn't talking about the payout. He was talking about furlongs and the specific sire of the winner. To him, that crumpled pari-mutuel bet ticket in his hand wasn't a gamble. It was a badge of participation. It was proof that he belonged to this world that, most people just see as a loud, dirty place to lose money. The common perception is that horse racing is just a playground for gamblers, right? A chaotic mess of chance and greed. We look at the shouting crowd and we just see a lack of logic. But if you look closer, through the lens of symbolic interactionism, you realize these people aren't just spectators. They're members of an intricate global subculture, all bound together by a secret language and this deep emotional investment. And what's even more fascinating is how this old world sport is suddenly colliding with the digital age. As we were standing there, he pulls out his phone to show me a character from Umamuzume, a digital horse girl based on the very thoroughbred we just watched. That's when it hit me. The boundaries of this subculture are shifting. How did a sport defined by dirt, sweat, and century-old tradition suddenly transform into a multi-billion-dollar pop culture phenomena? And what does a simple betting ticket actually reveal about our need for connection through competition?
That crumpled ticket is the perfect symbol for our mission today. Our source material takes us right into the heart of the horse racing subculture. And it is a community, defined by specialized knowledge, high emotional investment, and these shared rituals that extend far beyond the winning line. This is a deep dive into the business of intellectual and emotional labor. We are going to unpack three critical collisions. First, we're going to explore the psychological foundation of the fan identity. We'll ask how specialized knowledge is turned into valuable, monetizable fan investment. Second, we'll analyze the surprising economic model of winning by losing, which really came to define an entire era in Japan through the Haru-Urara phenomenon. And finally, we will dissect the highly sophisticated digital monetization strategy, the gacha mechanics, that is now driving the sport's global expansion through transmedia storytelling, epitomized by Umamuzume. The ultimate goal for you, the learner, is to understand how an ancient, high-stakes sport is leveraging modern digital economics and pop culture to sustain itself, and really to recruit an entirely new generation of enthusiasts. It's about recognizing the deep, intentional strategy that's just beneath the surface noise and the betting chaos.
Okay, let's unpack this idea of subculture first. You mentioned viewing the racetrack crowd through the lens of symbolic interactionism. What does that perspective immediately tell us that an outsider misses?
It tells us that what appears to be chaos is actually structure. Symbolic interactionism posits that a community is defined by the unique, shared language, meanings, and symbols that its members use to communicate and validate their existence.
Right.
So for someone who doesn't know the rules, the racetrack is purely chance. For an insider, it's a high-stakes arena where their competence and identity are constantly tested and reaffirmed.
And that competence, it starts with language. It's like a secret code or jargon that immediately signals whether you belong or not.
Exactly.
If you can discuss a maiden race, a race restricted to horses that haven't won yet, which are often highly unpredictable, you've established a certain level of knowledge or, understanding the exact precision needed for a photo finish.
Absolutely. The language acts as a badge. It's not enough to know that a horse ran fast. You need to know the units. Talking about distance in furlongs, which is 1/8 of a mile, rather than meters or yards, immediately establishes an insider status.
And on top of that, you need to navigate the cultural landmarks, the major leagues of the sport, so to speak.
Yeah, like dropping race names that carry this historical weight. Things like the Japanese Arima Kinen or the European Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe.
Those aren't just events.
No, they're symbols. They represent collective history, tradition, and knowledge accumulated over generations. Knowing the past winners, the trainers, the jockeys, that's currency in this subculture. But the most foundational piece of knowledge, the one that really links the past to the present, is pedigree.
Pedigree is where the intellectual investment really begins, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't just look at today's form. You have to understand the bloodline, tracking the successes and failures of the horse's sire, dam, grandsires.
And that links the deep history of the sport directly to the risk being taken today.
Which is where the industry's economic model becomes so fascinating, because it actively monetizes this intellectual labor. The system encourages, even rewards, the deep scholarly effort required to master the material.
We see this so clearly in that anecdote about Kenji, the retired salaryman in Tokyo. He's described not as a gambler, but as someone engaged in intense, almost academic-level research. Tell us a bit more about what Kenji actually studies.
Well, his process is meticulous. He's not relying on simple tips or, morning line odds. His system is a comprehensive synthesis of really complex data. He tracks the mare lineage back 3 or 4 generations, specifically looking for genetic indicators that might suggest resilience on different track surfaces or stamina over longer distances.
So it's historical genetic data mixed with real-time variables.
Precisely. In addition to the bloodlines, he meticulously documents track conditions. We're not just talking muddy or fast, but the track elasticity ratings, which measure the surface's spring and responsiveness. Yeah, and he cross-references this with the specific track record of the horse's trainers and jockeys, looking for patterns in performance under high-pressure scenarios or specific weather changes. He even studies jockey posture and weight shifts in previous races, trying to predict who might be holding a horse back for a planned future run.
That is an astonishing level of detail. So to him, the act of betting isn't some quick, impulsive decision.
Not at all. It's the orchestration of a complex system of analysis. He's declaring a conclusion based on days of specialized research.
And this is the intellectual labor that the industry monetizes. The crucial insight from Kenji's story is his treatment of the financial outcome. He keeps a meticulously organized binder filled with his losing pari-mutuel tickets. He views these losses not as sunk costs,
but as tuition fees.
Exactly. Tuition fees for a PhD in horse racing expertise.
Tuition fees, that changes the entire value proposition for the customer, doesn't it? But is that just a sophisticated rationalization for the sunk cost fallacy? How does the industry actually encourage this pay-to-learn mindset?
That's a critical point. And while the sunk cost fallacy is definitely a factor, the more time you invest, the harder it is to walk away. The industry sustains this model by constantly introducing new, complex variables that demand more intellectual effort.
So they keep feeding the beast, so to speak.
Right. The depth of the data that's available to fans on official sites, in specialized magazines, even on peer-to-peer forums, it all validates their pursuit of mastery. They are sold the potential for intellectual superiority, where the emotional satisfaction isn't derived from the financial outcome, but from the depth and integrity of their research.
So the payoff is less about the money and more about the validation of their knowledge. When their research horse wins, they haven't just won money. They've proven their intellectual model is correct, which reinforces their sense of competence and belonging.
Precisely. The act of betting becomes purely symbolic. It's a declaration of belief in their expertise, making them a participant in the outcome, not just a spectator. And the physical pari-mutuel ticket itself serves as a key artifact in this process.
Even with everything moving to digital betting.
Even then, that paper ticket is a tangible object that embodies their knowledge, their monetary investment, their time investment, tradition, and most importantly, emotion. It is the physical badge of participation that Kenji so proudly collects.
And the ticket is the entry fee into a community that provides a sanctuary from the fragmented digital world.
Which brings us to the cohesion aspect, the community and the shared rituals. In a highly individualized society, this subculture provides a crucial source of identity.
The scene in the smoke-filled izakaya near the Nakayama racecourse is a perfect illustration of this shared emotional vocabulary.
It really is. Picture the scene. It's a dimly lit, smoke-hazed pub where a group of friends, maybe retired colleagues or lifelong neighbors, get together after the last race. They might know very little about each other's professional lives.
But they share this rapid-fire specialized language, a secret code.
Yeah, they're discussing Shiba, turf, dirt, and Baba, the course. They aren't debating if the horse was good, but whether the condition of the track surface suited its stride length.
And the shared moment over a loss is key to this cohesion, right?
Absolutely. When one of the men reveals a catastrophic loss, there is a collective silent nod, maybe a quiet sigh, but there's no mockery. There is mutual, immediate understanding of exactly why the horse failed.
Was it the unexpected change in track moisture?
Did the jockey misjudge the final turn? They share the weight of the loss because they share the underlying knowledge and the intellectual effort that led to that decision.
So they aren't just selling membership to a club. They are selling mutual recognition and validation. This shared emotional vocabulary and mutual investment reinforces community bonds, and it cements that us versus them mentality against the non-believing world outside the track.
That is what sustains the community, sometimes even more powerfully than the promise of a win. And this profound emotional attachment to the horse's journey, regardless of the financial outcome, is the perfect psychological bridge to our next section.
Which is a case study that proved you can monetize this emotional investment even when the horse never ever won.
This takes us to the incredible phenomenon of Haru-Urara. If the sport traditionally sells the fantasy of champion pedigree and winning big, Haru-Urara redefined success by doing the exact opposite.
Haru-Urara was a Japanese mare, foaled in Hokkaido in 1996, who achieved a record of 0 wins in 113 starts between 1998 and 2004.
0 and 113. Statistically, she should have been completely obscure, yet she became Japan's most beloved equine celebrity.
Her sustained failure transformed her into a national icon, and the timing of her fame is absolutely crucial to understanding why.
It resonated profoundly with the national mood during Japan's prolonged lost decade of economic stagnation. Following the collapse of the asset bubble in the early 90s, the country was grappling with corporate failures, increasing unemployment, and a pervasive sense of national decline.
And Haru-Urara, the horse that kept running and kept losing but never gave up, she became the perfect analog for the struggling Japanese worker or the small failing business.
She embodied the spirit of perseverance, or gambaru.
Precisely. She became the icon of perseverance, proving that persistent, honest effort, even without reward, held inherent value. She didn't have a stellar pedigree or huge wins. She had authentic vulnerability.
And she had incredible brand differentiation. Her famous pink Hello Kitty-adorned racing mask.
That mask wasn't a corporate strategy, was it? It was a genuine reflection of affection from her caretaker, who used the popular motif to cheer her on.
And that authentic touch created a stronger, more emotional market connection than any calculated multi-million-dollar advertising campaign ever could. It became the visual representation of the underdog.
So the business strategy here was leveraging struggle as a competitive advantage in a saturated entertainment market.
It was pure, authentic perseverance marketing. Haru-Urara generated unprecedented media attention. She was covered on national television, including these deep dive features by NHK, the national broadcaster.
That's huge.
That massive free exposure elevated her story to a cultural phenomenon, achieving marketing value equivalent to millions of dollars in traditional advertising, all without the racecourse spending a single yen on promotion.
And her never give up slogan transcended the sport entirely. It was adopted by corporate motivational campaigns, used in textbooks, and became a mantra in personal development programs.
But the economic masterstroke was in the merchandising. Specifically, transforming her losing betting slips into Lucky Charms.
This is a perfect example of extracting value from failure through cultural insight. It hinges on some clever Japanese wordplay, right?
It does. The term for losing a bet is heijure. This sounds phonetically similar to hazardnai, which means to not come off, or in a symbolic sense, to avoid being struck or to not miss.
So a symbol of financial failure was culturally recoded into a consumer protection product.
Exactly. Her losing tickets were sold as talismans, as charms that would help you avoid personal or professional disaster. This secondary revenue stream was enormous. They sold over 43,000 units of associated merchandise, far exceeding expectations for a horse with 0 wins.
And this strategy successfully attracted non-traditional customers. Students needing luck on exams, office workers facing downsizing.
Right, and those just seeking spiritual comfort. Her appeal was so broad it became a national political topic.
It achieved remarkable political visibility. In 2004, the story culminated in this major public moment when Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi publicly expressed his admiration, saying he hoped she would win just once.
He recognized her as an exemplar of the national spirit of not giving up. Her perseverance was debated in the Diet, effectively cementing her brand recognition at the national institutional level.
This brings us to the concept of endurance economics. The track where she ran, Kochi Racecourse, was not a powerhouse. It was struggling with declining attendance and was facing closure. How did Haru-Urara sustain the operation?
The track management adopted what we call the 113 race mindset. They faced consistent operating losses between 15 and 20% annually during the late 90s and early 2000s. But instead of cutting her, they prioritized authentic storytelling and preserved the core operational capacity.
So they knew that chasing immediate profitability by replacing her with a higher potential horse would destroy the story they were inadvertently building.
Precisely. They recognized that the cultural capital they were generating outweighed the short-term financial drain.
And this endurance strategy paid off massively.
The emotional arc of her story eventually translated into significant regional economic development. Haru-Urara's fame attracted over 180,000 visitors to the region between 2003 and 2004. And these weren't just horse racing fans, these were cultural pilgrims.
So what was the quantifiable local economic impact?
The influx of visitors contributed an estimated 850 million yen to the local economy. This included spending on hotels, local restaurants, transport, souvenir shops. It represented a remarkable 45% increase in regional tourism during the peak years of her fame.
She revitalized a declining market simply by demonstrating persistent, honest struggle.
Her story lasted a generation, supporting the track's operations and the regional economy until she passed away in 2025. That depth of emotional attachment is extraordinary, and it provides the exact blueprint for the modern digital evolution of the sport.
It's the psychological cornerstone. The ability of a horse to evoke that level of specialized, sustained emotional investment, whether through champion status or 113 consecutive losses, is what the digital world is now monetizing on an unimaginable scale.
Which leads us directly to Umamuzume, Pretty Derby.
This is the digital tipping point. Umamuzume is a wildly successful transmedia revolution that features horse girls who are avatars of real champion racehorses. This isn't just a game, it's a profound cultural phenomenon.
It really is. The core premise is deeply integrated into the real sports lore. The game, the anime, the manga series, they all feature these Umamuzume beautiful anthropomorphic characters who inherit the names, personalities, and achievements of real thoroughbreds like Special Week, Gold Ship, and Rice Shower.
And the financial scale of this is just staggering. The game, launched by Cygames in 2021, has generated $2.5 billion in lifetime player spending on mobile platforms by September 2025.
And it wasn't just a flash in the pan. It was Japan's top-grossing mobile game in both 2021 and 2022, sustaining massive revenue years later. It even generated $4.46 million in a single day, August 24th, 2025, which was its highest single-day revenue in 4 years.
Wow.
This level of sustained profitability demonstrates the power of its underlying economic model, which we'll get into soon.
What makes this universe so compelling that it commands that level of spending? It has to go beyond just having cute characters. It's the depth of the fidelity to the real-world lore.
Oh, absolutely. The creators went to extraordinary lengths to embed real history into the digital product. The characters are imbued with the real-life achievements and backgrounds of their equine namesakes.
Like Special Week?
Yeah, take Special Week. Her character design references the fact that the real horse was raised by a nanny mare after its mother died shortly after birth. That deep, emotional, real-life backstory is integrated directly into her digital narrative.
Or look at the character Gold Ship. He reflects the real Gold Ship's reputation as quirky, unpredictable, sometimes prone to throwing his jockey off a lovable rogue.
Right. And Fuji Kiseki, the flashy, unbeaten colt, is depicted with this magnetic aura that attracts fans like a Cupid figure. The deep character development is rooted in historical fact and race commentary, which transforms these dry statistics into compelling personality traits.
Even a less successful horse like Twin Turbo, who is known for his all-or-nothing front-running style, which often led to burnouts.
He's embodied as a fearless but temperamental sprinter. This attention to detail is the engine for transmedia storytelling, and it serves a powerful function: recruitment. It fundamentally alters the demographic of the horse racing fan.
And this is best illustrated by the story of Akari, the young graphic designer. Her path into horse racing wasn't through a physical track, it was through her smartphone.
Akari's anecdote is absolutely central to understanding transmedia success. She invested hundreds of hours training the digital character Rice Shower in the game. He's an avatar based on a real famous racehorse known for being a villain for winning critical races that denied other fan favorites.
And through the game, she developed this profound emotional bond with the character.
A bond that transcended the screen and drove her to the physical animal.
Exactly. Akari's first ever trip to Hokkaido was not for a race, but to visit the real Rice Shower at a retirement ranch. She described it as feeling a spiritual connection to the animal, driven entirely by her digital interaction.
And that demonstrates a core concept of transmedia success. The digital symbol is literally driving the survival of the source. The game recruits a new demographic, younger and female, led by creating this intense emotional bond with the characters, which then transfers to the real horses.
And the recruitment effect is now global. The game has translated into Korean and Chinese, and its worldwide English launch in June 2025 was a massive success.
The data absolutely supports the global reach. The game generated $55.3 million in international spend in just the 3 months following that global launch. And importantly, the U.S. market led the overseas contribution, spending $37.2 million.
So it shows that this subculture and its characters resonate far beyond Asia.
For sure. We're seeing large fan meetups at major U.S. tracks like Santa Anita Park and discussions on forums about what a digital version of the famous American Horse Secretariat or the Australian champion Winx would look like.
That spiritual connection doesn't just generate cash for the game publisher, though. It produces real, tangible impacts on the physical industry, particularly in animal welfare.
This feedback loop is truly remarkable. The Umamusume phenomenon has directly benefited the welfare of retired racehorses. The annual donation campaign for the retirement of Nice Nature is the clearest example of this.
So before the game launched, the campaign was respectable. It received 1.76 million yen in 2020. But what happened after the Umamusume character was introduced?
The surge was immediate and massive. In 2021, donations skyrocketed to 35.82 million yen. The emotional investment in the digital character directly translated into financial support for the real-life animal.
And even after Nice Nature's death in 2023, the tradition of supporting retired thoroughbreds continued, with the campaign reaching over 70 million yen in 2024.
That surplus funding, driven entirely by digital fan devotion, allowed for top-class care and retraining for many other retired horses. It's fundamentally changing the landscape of post-racing life for these animals.
And the wealth generated by the digital sector is now being funneled back directly into the physical breeding and competitive side of the industry.
Absolutely. Susumu Fujita, the founder of Cygame's parent company, is now a billionaire, and he's demonstrating massive financial leverage.
Fujita, who also owns notable racehorses like the successful colt Forever Young, spent over 2.4 billion yen, that's over 25 million Australian dollars, at one JRHA select sale alone.
That kind of private investment, fueled by digital profits, is a massive sustaining force for the high-end breeding industry. This is how the digital symbol ensures the financial future of the physical source.
And the audience expansion goes beyond just donations and breeding capital. We're seeing a surge in physical viewership and attendance internationally. The Indonesian Derby viewership, for example, skyrocketed to 15,000 concurrent viewers.
And was accompanied by Umamusume-related memes in the live chat. We're also seeing physical, fan-driven events like Umamusume cosplay races held at the Royal Turf Club of Thailand.
Even traditional smaller racecourses in Japan, like Kasamatsu Racecourse, which is featured prominently in the Umamusume manga Cinderella Grey, have seen spectator numbers surge from a few hundred to exceeding 10,000.
This success is clearly driven by the emotional depth of the transmedia narrative, but that emotion is structured by an incredibly sophisticated economic mechanism. We need to shift gears now and understand the architecture of the billion-dollar model behind Umamusume.
The gacha strategy.
To understand the success of a game like Umamusume, which is fundamentally about collecting and training unique characters, we have to dissect the gacha system. Gacha is the core monetization mechanic of nearly all high-grossing mobile games, including Genshin Impact, which earned over $3 billion in its first year.
So let's start by contrasting gacha with the traditional mobile monetization model, which is freemium.
The distinction is critical. In the traditional freemium model, what we call the benchmark strategy, the provider sells deterministic products. This means the price is fixed and the outcome is certain. If you pay $5, you get 5 lives, or a special skin.
And this generally results in two static groups. The regular payers, which is a small minority, around 2 to 3% of the player base, and then the non-payers who will never spend money.
And gacha fundamentally changes that player behavior. It shifts the focus entirely. It sells stochastic products, meaning random draws, often known as loot boxes. Players pay currency to randomly pull for a key product, a special character, like a new Umamuzume.
And this system necessitates the provider adopting the game as a service, or GaaS model, earning continuous steady revenue across multiple time periods, rather than relying on one-off purchases.
But the real genius, as you noted earlier, isn't the randomness. It's the long-term strategic impact the key product has on the player's behavior.
Absolutely. In a game like Umamuzume, the key products, the specific horse girls, are not just items. They're designed to be idols. They're heavily invested in unique voice acting, deep background stories, and powerful, distinct skill sets.
So obtaining a key product does two things. First, it provides short-term utility. You get to use the new content. But more importantly, it provides a long-term impact by significantly increasing the player's involvement level and, consequently, their willingness to pay, or WTP, for future products.
So it's a mechanism engineered to convert free players into long-term investors in the ecosystem.
It is. The gacha model achieves this through its conversion mechanism, which utilizes a free draw probability, which the economic models denote as Q.
Okay, let's break down this variable Q for the listener.
Think of Q as the bait, the chance to get a new, highly desirable character for free during a promotional event. If the free draw fails, the player then has the option to purchase the paid currency to try again.
So the core strategic purpose of setting this free draw probability Q is to gradually convert the non-payers into paying customers over time.
Exactly. And that conversion comes with an initial financial sacrifice for the provider, right?
It does. This is the crucial trade-off. By offering the free draw, the Q probability, the provider initially loses some profit from existing payers who might have purchased the key product but received it for free instead.
But the mechanism operates on the assumption that the extra profit earned from the newly converted payers in later periods will exceed that initial short-term loss.
So gacha isn't about immediate profit maximization. It's an endurance strategy, much like the 113 race mindset of Haru-Urara.
Yeah.
You have to run the race long enough to see the payoff.
Exactly. You have to play the long game. The numerical analysis we have confirms this structural necessity. When comparing the gacha strategy profit to the benchmark strategy profit over a 10-period analysis, a distinct long-term pattern emerges.
So what happens in the short term?
In the initial periods, say periods 1 through 3, the gacha strategy consistently earns less profit than the simpler benchmark strategy. This is the cost of conversion, the loss incurred due to the free draws.
So if the company only plans to run the game for a short period, the benchmark strategy is simply more profitable.
For sure. But then we hit a crossover point.
Okay.
Around period 4, in the analyzed example, the situation flips. At this point, the incremental profit earned from those newly converted players, the ones who received a free character, increased their WTP and decided to spend money on the next character, starts to exceed the initial loss caused by the free draws.
And the profit gap then continues to widen in gacha's favor.
Right. The conversion starts paying off around period 4. But the total cumulative profit for gacha finally surpasses the benchmark strategy only much later, in period 8 of the example.
Which clearly demonstrates that gacha requires operating the game for long enough periods. The GAS model is non-negotiable for it to be the optimal strategy.
The patient provider is rewarded. The data showed that by running the game for 10 periods, the payer group size increased from an initial 0.5, representing 50% of the active base, to about 0.72.
That is a conversion of 44% of the original non-payers. They were gradually converted over those 10 periods. They went from being pure consumers of free content to paying customers.
Simply because they obtained a key product that boosted their involvement and their willingness to pay for the next character.
This analysis allows us to distill 3 specific required conditions for the gacha strategy to be truly optimal and explain why it works so well for Umamusume.
First, as we established, the game must follow the GAS model and run for multiple periods. A small number of periods favors the benchmark strategy because you never reach that profitable crossover point.
Second, the key products themselves must be powerful catalysts for involvement. This is the grammar we denote as BAE. Let's explain BAE in conversational terms.
BAE represents the magnitude of the increase in the player's long-term involvement level, their WTP, after obtaining a key product. This parameter has to be high. This is why the providers must invest so heavily in the design, story, and voice acting.
They need to transform these digital assets into quasi-idols that players develop that spiritual connection with, like Akari did with Rice Shower.
Exactly. It's not just a numerical upgrade. It's an emotional bond that makes the player feel, guilty about not playing or investing in that character's success, which drives them to purchase future support items or new characters.
That's the crucial difference. You don't expect a super bomb in a match 3 game to significantly increase your long-term WTP.
But a beautifully animated, fully voice-acted horse girl with deep lore and historical resonance absolutely does. If Sarsha is low, gacha fails.
And the third condition deals with the time value of money, the time discount factor, which is denoted by RP. This is essentially how much the game provider cares about money they make next year versus the money they make today.
Correct. Since gacha is an endurance strategy that decreases profits early and increases them later, the game provider must not discount future revenues too heavily. If the discount factor is high, meaning they value future revenue almost as much as current revenue, gacha is optimal.
But if the discount factor is too low, for example, if a company is desperate for cash flow today, the future profits from converted payers are diminished too much, and the simpler benchmark strategy becomes optimal.
This entire structure explains why Umamuzume is a $2.5 billion enterprise. It successfully created a product, the Horse Girls, that have a high long-term involvement boost, and its parent company, Cygames, has adopted a long-term view of profitability within the necessary GAS model.
The sophistication of this system is that it takes the same fundamental human desire that drives Kenji to obsessively research pedigrees and drives Haru-Urara's fans to buy her losing tickets, the desire for connection, validation, and sustained effort, and applies a digital, highly repeatable monetization layer.
We started this journey standing next to a screaming fan at a racetrack, watching him lovingly clutch a crumpled Perry Mutual betting ticket that symbolized his intellectual labor. And we've traced that lineage into a multi-billion-dollar digital empire built on anime horse girls and sophisticated gacha economics.
The common thread weaving through all these sources is the extraordinary and quantifiable value of human emotion, specialized knowledge, and shared narrative.
The horse racing industry's surprising economic durability comes from its profound ability to evolve. First, by converting intellectual effort into a symbolic investment that validates fan identity, and now by leveraging sophisticated digital gacha systems to monetize sustained emotional involvement across a multi-year GOS framework.
This transmedia approach, epitomized by Umamusume, is not just a passing cultural gimmick. It's a critical long-term strategy for attracting younger and female-led demographics globally, driving massive financial investment back into the physical sport, and ensuring the financial future of a century-old industry by fulfilling that essential human need for connection and achievement, whether that narrative is written in dirt and sweat or in high-definition code.